Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Committee of the Whole meeting of Fernie City Council held at 6:31 p.m. on July 16th, 2024. Kisukukit, we acknowledge that the city of Fernie is located within Kukitamakas, the unceded territory of Yakutat Nucleat. We recognize that we live and work within their vast lands. My Kanahunik are from Yakutat Nucleat and are members of the Tanaha-speaking peoples of British Columbia, Idaho, and Montana. And before I call the meeting to order, I wanted to pass my compliments on to Fernie Fire Rescue today for responding to a structure fire in very short order. While I understand there was quite a bit of damage to the structure, there was no, you contained the fire to the structure, and in this kind of weather, that's really to be commended. It could have been really awful. So thank you to our fire rescue team for that. I'll call the meeting to order, and I'll ask for a mover and a seconder that the agenda of the July 16th, 2024 Committee of the Whole meeting be adopted. Moved by Councillor Audia Kelly, seconded by Councillor Nixon. Is there any discussion? All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. And then I will ask for a mover and a seconder that the minutes of the June 18th, 2024 Committee of the Whole meeting be adopted. Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Audia Kelly. Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you. I'll now open the floor to public participation and invite the public in attendance or participating electronically who wish to comment on items listed on the meeting agenda in accordance with section 3.7.3 of the procedure bylaw to address council, except speakers must not address council regarding a matter for which a public hearing must be held or has been held pursuant to the Local Government Act prior to council's consideration of the matter or adoption of the bylaw. Speakers must not address council regarding a permit for which public notice must be given or has been given pursuant to the Local Government Act prior to council's consideration of issuance of the permit. And a speaker may only address council for a maximum of 3 minutes. So I'll look to the gallery and ask, is there anybody in attendance who would like to address council? Please approach the microphone and identify yourself, and you have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Chris Inglis.
Sorry, Mr. Inglis, can you turn the microphone on? It's a little speaker button on there. There you are.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Chris Inglis. Was a resident of Fernie for 55 years. I'm currently a business owner at Fernie Corn Sales with a mailing address of 1151 First Avenue. I'm here tonight just some public input from around town for the mayor and for council regarding the fire hall update that's going to be presented tonight. I'm not sure what's going to be presented, but just please keep in mind there's lots of opposition to this already around town. We're not gonna, I hope you're not gonna go ahead like you're gonna build the Taj Mahal of a fire hall like you did with the city yards and half of it's not even being used. There has to be a lot of consideration been brought into this, just like at Christmas when everybody has a wish list, you don't always get what you want. And I hope that council will consider what the wants and needs are and, you know, go about that, because I think this referendum is gonna really bring us some pushback from the community and for the taxpayers as well, because as you know, a lot of people can't afford to live here no longer because of the tax increases. And just of note too, want you to know, talking about taxes and maybe referendum coming up, Cedars, a friend of mine has a property up there. He's over $11,000 in taxes, one of the highest in Canada, not in British Columbia, in Canada, she said. So, you know, you just really got to look at those numbers. And the other thing I really, I'm pretty adamant about is look at these buildings, the community center, the fire hall, all need replacement, didn't have any upgrades, didn't have any management. And this is all done under the watch of Mr. Baranowski. He's been here just about 5 years, November the 15th.
I'm going to stop you there, Mr. Inglis. We're not here to cast aspersions. You can talk about the issues. Don't talk about people.
I'm talking about the issues of the state of the fire hall.
Don't talk about people.
Yeah. State of the fire hall, the state of the community center has all been under the watch of certain people, and they're still here. So there's the city council and mayor really need to take a hard look of who they got in charge. Thank you.
Ms. Rhodes, is there anyone else online who's indicated a desire to speak? Thank you. That moves us along to item number 6, presentation by Elk Valley RCMP.
Hit the right button this time, thankfully.
Good evening.
Welcome. Thank you for the invitation again. It's great to be here. Nice to be on a regular schedule, and I'm really appreciating it. I know Brad wanted to be here too as well, but he's on his last day of leave, so he'll be back tomorrow. And then I am gone myself on Thursday for a couple weeks, so you'll be in his good hands. This is for the first quarter of the of what is our fiscal year, so from April to June. We've broken it down a little bit further, I hope. I know it's not quite ideal to what you wanted. Part of the issue we're having is I believe I referred to it before, is the atoms that are existing. So atoms are like locations within the area. And sometimes the system that we use, Prime, and the people that control Prime won't necessarily let us create something when there isn't enough need for it, but that kind of covers off some of it too as well. But we're still working through that. So I know you wanted some more input about the ski hill area, et cetera. Sorry, Mr.
Sorry, Sven. We have been working up a template.
Oh, so you've been doing it too. Okay, great.
Yeah, so we'll refine it a bit and share it with you. And if there's information you can't supply, or as you say, for one reason or another, or is unavailable, or it's overreach in terms of HR or whatever, please let us know. So we'll workshop it together. And
absolutely. I think that's a great idea, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. So I won't dwell a little bit on that, but there are some difficulties within the system that we use that just don't make it quite as simple. But we have tried to break it down a little bit more further for you as per the ask from last time. So one of the things, obviously, if we go into the total call volume that we've had a busier year than normal on average, although surprisingly, like I was telling Michael just before the meeting, when I ran the call volume types, or the total call volume for the year, we're literally within 15 from last year. So we're around 2170 right now, and last year was around 2155. So it's fairly close. Historically, that's not exactly a surprise, but as you can see from the numbers, the first quarter has been busy in both Fernie municipality as well as District of Sparwood, and generally across the board. If we go down into some of the offenses, again, trying to break things down a little bit more for you, as you can see, the differences that we have there with intimate partner violence. We've only had one reported event in the quarter, which is obviously a very good thing. Doesn't necessarily mean more is not happening, but it does indicate a safer community. The break and enter totals that you've asked before that you were asking about, so we broke those down a little bit further. So you have the founded events is 0. Of course, we had the recent one just in July here at the Gear Hub. That is obviously going to be a founded event, but that's not necessarily part of this quarter's findings. And we're still obviously investigating that. But as you can tell, there was 30 total events reported. And as I indicated last time, with the way we score those events, you have the unfounded business complaints. So those are the alarm calls, the 21. Those are the events we're going to that the members are going to. So literally they went to all of them, which is a good thing. Obviously, we want to make sure those events aren't occurring. So they went to all those events and they all found them to be unfounded. Theft of vehicles, we had 2. One, which was an unfounded event. She just misplaced her parked car. No joke. And then we had a legitimate theft, which was recovered in Sundre, Alberta, actually, and that was a Ford F-350. Which isn't necessarily a surprise. If you know anything about stolen vehicles, those are one of the more easier vehicles to steal in those particular years between 03 and 08, I think, or 06. And that was just one that happened. We're working with the Sundre RCMP with that. Bike thefts, I know was interest to you too as well. We just had the one unfounded one, and again, the teacher had found it and put it in a storage shed. So again, good news, right? So we're breaking things down a little bit more for you. The theft from motor vehicles, I don't really have a lot on that, but the mischief ones are rather interesting. Again, mostly just things like windows being broken, business being egged. We had one occasion where unfortunately feces was smeared on a window of a commercial business in the downtown core.
Oh,
By the time
goodness.
we were advised and got there, it was already cleaned up. Apparently someone left their underwear on the window too. I just don't mean to be too descriptive, but it's just kind of a really strange event. But they had cleaned it up before we got there, so there was nothing we could really do with that. And there was no video in the area that really allowed us to do anything. We had one event where there were children on school property that were asked to leave and they were being filmed to get them to leave. And so we dealt with that. And then obviously another report with children being on the school roof, which aren't necessarily untypical events. So those are kind of the mischief things in there. The specific events to mischief, loss, enjoyment of property, which is something I mentioned before about domestics kind of being linked into that, just because of how we operate within our system for that. When we have to deal with someone who's done something that's not necessarily an assault, but has done something to influence a person's enjoyment of their property. One was related to a domestic event which damage to a residence between a boyfriend-girlfriend, and the other one was a rowdy tenant. Motor vehicle collisions, thankfully, have been relatively minor. All the majority of ones we had, I believe, 18 in total. There was a very large majority of those were parked vehicles in parking lots. So basically, like what we would call like a hit and run type thing. They classify under collisions, just how we have to account for them. And then we had 2 accidents on the highway, one of which was a animal. We had a medical incident too as well at MBI in town here in Fernie, and that would have been probably in April. And then one running a red stop sign, pardon me, and another one failing to yield. And that's basically all the sort of talking notes that I have on that. Obviously, we continue on with the rest of the offenses. The impaired investigations, the detachment here does a very good job at investigating those. We continue to do that. We already have one member that is halfway to what they call the Elite Alexa Award. So he's already over 25 impaired for the year, which is, considering he's in general duty and taking his fair share of calls, is a pretty amazing thing.
Mm-hmm.
So he actually got 2 the other night. They were calling, they're starting to call him the legend. But anyway, so it's a local joke. It's a local joke. But he's doing a great job, and all the members are doing a good job with that. I don't have a complaint. And of course, the search and rescue call-outs don't necessarily tell you what your local Fernie team does. Those are events that they're linked to us. Obviously, your Fernie Search and Rescue does an amazing job, gets called out literally within the Southeast District routinely because of their skill set, and those numbers aren't accounted for here. So certainly doesn't relate to anything to do saying they're not doing anything. They do a lot of work outside of what we're called about. So, and I'm sure you know that, but I just wanted to speak to that based upon the reflection of being 0 and then 2 and 3 in the area overall. So anybody have any questions for me?
Thank you. Questions from council?
Sorry.
No, that's okay. Councilor Nixon.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you for coming back and clarifying that. That was very thoughtful.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to seeing the template that we're going to have in front of us soon.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm interested to see that too as
Thank
well.
you.
So that'd be great. So looking forward to that. Thank you.
Excellent. Other questions? I'm curious, Staff Sergeant, if so the business unfounded and the residential unfounded, do you find they're often repeat? Like, are these the same alarms? And is there a cost to either the business or the residents if they keep going off?
No, not from us. There is a potential that a municipality could put that into place based upon the response within their boundaries, I guess you could say. And that is certainly something that's done in other areas to stop that action, because what we find is a lot of the businesses, it's really not that bad here, but globally, and speaking to a larger term, it's a real problem where people don't have like stakeholders attached or there's nobody to really call. So this is one reason why the members, I mean, we'd go anywhere, obviously they're going, but it is a potential problem. So I know in a lot of cases that's been resolved via city bylaws where they've either taken a position where, you know, if you have a false one, you get a freebie, and then the second one ends up being like a bylaw charge. So we end up working with your bylaw department with that a little bit just to justify that, because of course I'm sure you want your police officers doing something that's a lot more productive than driving, say, from, let's say, Elkford,
Sure.
for example, down to Fernie to respond to a false break and enter, even though it's important that we go, and obviously members decides to go, that's great for me. I'm not trying to dispute that, but it is a vested time and takes them away from other more serious investigations. And of course, there's travel time related to that, et cetera, too, as well. As you all know, it's not a short drive around this area. So, but yeah, so certainly there is a methodology that you can look at for that. And there's several locations that do that. I know Prince George City does that. Kamloops does that. I believe Williams Lake does that now. There's a bunch of locations, Kelowna for sure. Comox Valley actually refuses to go to them, at least last I had heard. And again, it's been a while since I've been there, so I apologize to Comox Valley if it's changed. But when I was there, they actually had like security was very active. So we would be just cruising down the street looking for stuff or looking for something, and suddenly this white security vehicle would pass us and go to the location. If they discovered something, they would call us. So a lot more consistent there, and we never went to alarm calls there like at all unless they became an active event. So there is a methodology that you can adopt to help that for sure.
Yeah, no, I appreciate. I wasn't suggesting we would pursue that via bylaw or otherwise. I was just wondering if, because I imagine your primary goal is education and
100%.
And system improvement. If you're getting the same alarm from the
Yeah, well, a lot of times I believe like the businesses, the alarm companies are kind of selling it as the RCMP will respond to the event, right?
Right.
And, you know, obviously the majority of the time we are, because we're interested in crime reduction.
Sure.
We want to protect our local businesses. We want our people to feel safe. So obviously it bows to that sort of thinking, but in the extended version of that, like, you know, there is a time loss, right? You know, for that. And as you well know, your RCMP officers are not inexpensive. So would you rather have them concentrate on like a more serious investigation, say like a sexual assault event or a child pornography file, rather than take their time to drive to an event, investigate it, write it up, report it back? I don't have the exact breakdown of hourly times because it can change here, but even locally, to go to an event, not load up, but get in the vehicle, go to an event, write it up, drive back, you're looking anywhere from 20 to 25 minutes typically that you're going to spend on that occasion. Now, if you do that twice a night, that's an hour. Is that something that's really the best use of our time from your perspective or a taxpayer's perspective? I would argue no.
Yeah.
Given the circumstances, but it's,
yeah, I don't disagree. And I look at the number of call outs, like I appreciate they're not as serious as some of the other issues you're dealing with, but they're the greatest in number. There's 30 of them and they're all unfounded, which
well,
it feels like there's an education and system improvement process there.
For sure.
We can maybe jointly undertake at some point.
Yeah, and I think that's a good idea to sort of start with an education piece first about it. And, you know, we can certainly help assist with that, you know, in that regard. And we can do better at that too, to be frank. I mean, it's not something we generally sort of go around talking about, hey, make sure you have a stakeholder on your list. And, you know, we typically don't have the time during the event itself. And then by the time it's reviewed, it's sort of shoved into the stack and away we go again. So yeah, for sure. We could do better with that too as well. I think we could work as a partnership with that pretty easily.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments from council? Seeing none, thank you, Staff Sergeant. Appreciate your time.
Thank you again.
Always a pleasure.
Good to see you.
And with that, we'll move on to item 7.1, a reporter from our Director of Fire and Emergency Services, Chief Morgan.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm happy to come here before you this evening to give you an update on the progress we're making designing the needs-based fire hall. I'll start by just reviewing the work done in getting where we are today. In 2018, sorry, see it's not on the screen here.
Yeah.
Apologies for that.
Not at all.
Yeah, so in 2018, we did a feasibility study conducted by JD Architects. And then in 21, we did a needs assessment completed by Firewise Consulting. In 22, the old temporary fire hall on 3rd Avenue closed due to structural concerns. And then in 22, thankfully, we moved out of that structure and we moved to a safer place, which was the 1492 Railway Avenue at the Public Works facility. Then in 2023, Arcadis contracted to lead the next steps. Vigorous work was done in assessing possible sightings for a fire hall, and you've now decided on that location. Options for co-use were assessed through expression of interest process. And our focus over the last couple of months has been the functional requirements. That is what we're going to focus on tonight. The process of the functional requirements started with consulting with both auxiliary and career firefighters, and that's where we got started. Volunteer or auxiliary firefighter recruitment and retention has been identified as the single biggest threat to the volunteer fire service today. Despite core full-time personnel, Fernie Fire is entirely dependent on auxiliary firefighters to provide the authorized services. The auxiliary firefighters receive minimal income from services they provide. It is challenging to find auxiliary firefighters who are healthy, able, and interested in training, and who can tolerate the emotional highs and lows of emergency response, and are prepared to take multi-year commitments to their community. Auxiliary firefighters are under pressure to meet obligations from their primary employer, families, and other activities or volunteer opportunities and complexities of modern life. The fire hall plays a critical role in supporting effective auxiliary firefighter recruitment and retention strategies. Historically, one of the essential benefits of firefighters, both career and auxiliary, was the sense of team and belonging. That came with being a part of the department. The need for the volunteers to feel part of the team is as strong as ever. We have experienced this with our current temporary location and difficulty in retaining firefighters with the setup that we have right now. Consultation with auxiliary firefighters' expectations is, we talk to them, and their big thing was inclusion of health and wellness facilities within the fire hall, and then development of the spaces that can accommodate reflective or social opportunities should be part of that design. Another proven retention strategy is to have a robust and challenging training program. Proper training areas is essential in the design of the new facility. Firefighters are aware of the potential health impacts of their decision to become a firefighter, increased cancer rates, and the risk of heart disease due to diet, shift work, and other factors are better understood every day. The inclusion of health and lifestyle considerations, including fitness areas, should form a part of the fire hall design. Emerging science is demonstrating that health and wellness are not just related to physical health. Mental health challenges require facility spaces that can be used to support quiet and reflective areas for members to come together. Physical fitness plays a significant role in promoting mental wellness as well. Social and amenity areas provide quiet spaces and allow for post-incident decompression, as well as areas where firefighters can come together in a more social setting. These activities are essential to development of cohesive team. Career fire department staff often spend full shifts together, working and socializing. The current situation in auxiliary ranks sees firefighters only coming together for response and training, neither of which support the optimum development of team bonds. We also consulted with the internal business group with lots of suggestions like utilities, water or fire flow, engineering, congestion, traffic, and all those sorts of things. Throughout the whole process, though, we've also consulted with the community working group with ideas and suggestions from a community's perspective. Now, finally, I, along with our consulting firm, Arcadis, are taking all these needs, thoughts, suggestions, and paring down to get the best and affordable functional design for our community's fire hall.
Sorry, Chief, can I ask a question? and I don't mean to put you on the spot. How many auxiliary firefighters would have responded today, for example?
So we had 7 operational career firefighters. We have 8, plus the deputy and myself, and we had 4 auxiliary firefighters.
So they're, not to put too fine a point on it, but they're critical to our response.
Extremely.
Thank you.
Okay, design principles for siting and construction of a fire hall fall into 2 streams, discretionary and non-discretionary. Discretionary have some degree of flexibility over the process. These range from site selection, partnerships to extent of energy and efficiency, and building material choices to service what will be incorporated in the fire hall's design. Non-discretionary considerations include compliance with regulatory regimes like BC Building Code, plumbing codes, work safe regulations, industry standards like National Fire Protection Association, provide valuable insights into industry-specific considerations related to firefighting and safety programs. Not all of the considerations, though, are for a fire hall fall directly into codes or standards, but instead exist in best practices. While the fire hall is required to house fire trucks and equipment, its most important function is to accommodate the needs for the firefighters who are necessary to operate the equipment and deliver the services. The experience of thousands of fire services worldwide provide extensive best practice understandings of making facility work properly and supporting various functions that are specific to the service needs each community provides. Some are captured in standards, others are part of the training and experience of the professionals serving Fernie Fire and Emergency Services. I can give you a couple of examples of this situation where we run 2 operational firefighters every shift, 24/7. 60% of the time we have 2, 40% of the time we just have 1 on shift. So if you're looking at a daytime, for example, there would be the deputy and myself, which are not generally operational, we're administrative. But there's just 1 operational firefighter doing the checks, doing all the inspections, doing a lot of the day-to-day stuff. So, that there can be a myriad of issues that come up with just having 1 on shift. You look at things like even backing up a fire truck with 1 person on shift in the evenings, weekends. We look at things like how you should act while you're by yourself in a fire hall, whether it's like getting up on the trucks, loading hoses, like that's a no-no, obviously. So we got to look at these kind of things when we're designing a fire hall. When we do have 2, for example, on shift, and we do get a response or an emergency call for a fire, we generally have the 2 call in all the off-duty career and auxiliary firefighters to go to the fire, just like we did today. And then those 2 automatically go out in our engine and head to the scene. They assess the scene, do a 360, make a pre-plan before the rest of the firefighters get there. So what then happens is we've got our staff all coming to the fire hall from all parts of town. They need a safe space to access the facility, to park. Once they're in the facility, it needs to be efficient in order to get to the bunker room, in order to get to don your equipment and then to get into the vehicles. And then obviously a safe way to get out of the facility and into our streets in town. So design for best practice is obviously paramount.
Sorry, Chief. Will you talk a little bit about post-incident as well? Like, so I don't know if that's a slide that's coming, sorry.
Yeah.
Because returning from an incident, particularly, so anybody who entered that building, for example, today, would have been potentially exposed to carcinogenic chemicals in smoke or, whatever the circuit. I'm no expert, of course, as you well know.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a great point. And, for example, today, industry has changed so much with the carcinogens that we face. We've got so many presumptive cancers where they assume that, most of the cancers that we get from our job. So many things change as far as WorkSafe goes, NFPA standards. For example, when we're on scene today, which never would have happened when I started, once we're done at the scene, everyone doffed their clothes and we sprayed all the clothes down, put them in bags, take them to the fire hall. They're supposed to go into a decon room where everything gets cleaned in a dirty side of the fire hall. Obviously, that's not something we have yet, but that is the standard today on new fire halls. Then they get into a special washer, extractor washer, then they get dried and then they get put back into service.
And sorry, chief, and the firemen need to be decontaminated.
And the
themselves.
firefighters need to be decontaminated,
Firefighters,
decontaminated, exactly. So the way fire departments are built nowadays is you have a clean side with administration, dorms, kitchen, and so on. Most of you got to see it in Creston. Very clean on one side. We have the bays with exhaust extraction units that go onto the trucks. And then we have a clean side, dirty side, which would have all your showers for decontamination, cleaning gear, workshops, filling stations. And so, yeah, the whole industry has changed that way and for the better, obviously. But with that comes obviously cost to every fire department, regardless of the size. So that is industry standard now, and there's no getting around that. And for good reason. Like, I think about when I, through my career, we hung our gear right around the trucks with the diesel exhaust running with no extraction. I mean, yeah. So it is important that we go down that road at least to get the minimum standards for those issues of decontamination and carcinogens.
Yeah, because and sorry if I'm interrupting again, but it is unacceptable to me that we accept that firefighters are going to enter this profession by and large knowing that it will on average shorten their lives. And you talked about presumptive cancer, which is highly unfortunate, and that we don't provide them with the appropriate decontamination infrastructure. Because I'm reminded of just south of us, Libby, Montana, and I know it's a completely different issue, but many of the people who were contaminated with asbestos in that community were the families of workers coming home without appropriate decontamination infrastructure.
Facilities, yeah.
And we don't want to participate in that. I think that's unforgivable, quite frankly. Anyways, I apologize. Councillor Hamilton, do you have a question?
I did have a question, but it was answered. It was about specifically the decontamination of the individuals after a scene and what's required so that they aren't bringing it home and risking contaminating their family and neighbors, friends.
Thank you.
I mean, in this industry, you're automatically going to have it anyways. If you're going into that, we had 6 guys going into that building today that was fully involved in fire and smoke. They're going to be in contact with it. The gear is good, but it's not foolproof. So
Fair.
That's why there's presumptive even with these other.
Yeah, layers of protection. Absolutely. Councillor Nixon.
Thank you, Worship. I had the same sort of concerns about the turnout gear and the bunker gear and stuff like that. And I'm just wondering, is there any fire halls that do a negative pressure rooms or anything like that? Do you know that? I mean, is that
so what they do now though is even the bunker rooms where the bunker gear is clean, because you can't clean your helmets perfectly, the bands and everything. What they do is they have extraction fans in those rooms to pull out the air regardless of clean or dirty. Yeah.
Councillor Adi Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. I just want to backtrack us a tiny little bit, Chief, because I wanted to say, like when we saw Creston, we were talking about the health and wellness. So I don't want people to get the idea that they're these big gigantic areas. They're actually quite small, but are essential as well with the some of the gym equipment and the sauna that's been known to help after you've been at a fire. So I just wanted people to understand that it's not like a gigantic gym
No,
facility.
they're quite modest.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
modest.
No comments from the gallery, please.
After all the needs specified to Fernie are looked at, we take into account all the legislative requirements. We then build a matrix that encompasses all of the essentials for the conceptual design. So in this picture, and I apologize, I understand that the next 3 slides are hard to see and interpret, but they'll be, Arcadis will be using these exact tables for the final presentation and final report. So I just want to give you a snippet of what it kind of looks like and how we came to where we are in trying to pare down where we can sort of use the non-discretionary and discretionary and limit, obviously, the discretionary side. So Council, you'll see here as an example from the current draft report, our consultant is developing of a matrix showing requirements that whether they're driven by NFPA standards, building code required space, or OHS or occupational health and safety, or just requested by the team as important to the delivery of the service, which, you know, I pointed out a few things here already. An example of each would be like a training room, and the size is required space and has an NFPA standard, or a dorm room. A general office for employees is required based on our procedures and staffing level. And then offices for the chief and lounge or gathering area are requested, as discussed earlier, which is also non-discretionary or is discretionary. As discussed earlier, there may not be an NFPA standard for a gathering area, but bringing auxiliaries and career firefighters together is critical to recruitment and retention of the force Fernie relies on. This is an example of where, and I apologize again and we've got, you know, basically all of the WorkSafe, building code, NFPA, which we will have in that report to show the legitimacy of what we're building and where we're making sure that we're meeting our minimums. This is an example of where in the final report you'll find a clear mapping of the standard and where it applies in our building program. Finally, all of these standards and requirements are then consolidated into a master table showing the program elements or space, the quantity, the size and the area, and the comments on the rationale for that. This all being reviewed and refined to provide a tight and concise functional program to support a final conceptual design and budget estimate in late August. You know, the intention of this process is to fit with the corporate strategies and policies. A needs-based fire hall design is being created to ensure we meet provincial regulatory requirements, National Fire Protection Association standards, and the operational needs for our community. To meet Council's values of fiscal responsibility and resilience, we are completing this work as needs-based design, ensuring that will design a facility that allows us the capacity to adequately serve our community while also minimizing the cost of the new building. This facility design refinement work is also being undertaken to support Council's objective of quality service and livable community, ensuring our firefighters can deliver dependable, sustainable service to ensure public safety and in support of responsible asset management. Staff are employing rigorous processes to review the design and the functional considerations for needs-based fire hall. You know, it's out there in the community, the Taj Mahal, the Palace, all that stuff. I can assure you that we're putting like a sharp pencil to this, and we are going to make sure that our firefighters are safe. We're going to ensure that the future building will serve both the community as well as the professionals responsible for keeping our citizens safe through this essential service. The design refinements for the fire hall are nearing completion, and staff expect conceptual design and costing for the fire hall will be brought forward to council review on August 27th. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Council, questions, comments? Councilor Hamilton.
I've got a number of questions from reading the report. The first one, I'm gonna get a little technical, BC 3.2.2.84, one of the building codes that was listed in the report. Talks about the construction materials being of a combustible or non-combustible manner. And I'm just curious how a combustible material and post-disaster construction overlap.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm not an engineer or architect or
enough.
anything, but yeah. And so, you know, part of that, Councillor Hamilton, is we're looking at a 50-year build, 70-year build, hopefully. We've got to look at things like that, especially in this environment that we have with, wildfire. I don't know if it'd be wise to build a timber frame or timber wood framed or wood sided building and so on. So we got to look at construction that way, non-combustible wise. There's lots of things to think about, and maybe we can't right now, but we might have to look at things like, Vancouver just got their first electric engine. Down the road, I mean, within 50 years, you'd hope that everyone's using electric. Then we don't have to worry about so much about these carcinogens from diesel particulate and so on. But I mean, we don't know what's going to happen, but some of those things need to be thought about when we are designing this building, because it is going to be a 50-year build, right? As a minimum.
Further?
If you'll indulge me. The next question was around the building code 3.8.2.3, which I believe is the accessibility side of things. And I know when we were in Creston, as was mentioned earlier, the accessibility side of things didn't actually pertain to the residences in the fire hall. And I'm just curious if you can expand on that for the community.
Yeah, so accessibility in this situation would be that when public come in, say to reception, or we have meetings in there for the community, that we need to make sure that they have the ability to get in there. At this point in our careers and the way the state of our industry is that we expect people to be able to go upstairs in our industry. So I don't know if that'll change, but at this point we're expecting a fit females, males to be hired on or be auxiliary firefighters with us. So as far as accessibility to be upstairs in say the kitchen or the dorm rooms or any other meeting rooms up there that are just for the employees would not be considered in this situation.
One more?
One last one. I know that the report coming to us in August that was mentioned is on the needs-based review and whatnot, but I'm curious, at what stage will council be able to discuss and get some input from staff and the architects on, business cases of, if we choose A option, it's going to potentially reduce operating costs by X, or looking at variables and discussing and debating the direction that we go with regards to whether we keep the purchase price as low as possible, or whether we're looking at the full life cycle and what the full life cycle cost of this building will be.
Great question, Councillor Hamilton. I would have to defer that to either Dustin or Mr. Bordenhouse.
If I'm interpreting your question correctly, I think you're looking more at an additional funding opportunity type step or detailed design, like is where you're kind of looking to get into business case for a certain type of construction material.
I guess it might be more detailed design stage, and that would come after this August report. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Baranowski?
Your worship and council, there are some of those considerations that the chief and Arcadis have been working through, including how many bays, how many rooms, what are you doing for future growth versus not, and what would the implication be of not building something that you're going to need within a decade or after that, given that you have to potentially disrupt your fire service and do demo and then construction. And so there's some of that projection being done for council to consider some of the elements, but again, as Mr. Heisler said, there are some detailed design elements that just aren't in the scope of the Arcadis work that's underway right now.
Thank you.
If I can expand on that
Yeah,
too,
please.
and that's a great point, is that, we only have 2 firefighters on shift. And so why wouldn't you just need 2 dorm rooms? There's the example of Creston, where they have a work experience program. I know I've talked to the union and they would consider something like that in our situation. It would definitely save us on overtime costs. Because legitimately, if you have 4 responding to a fire initially, that is basically what NFPA wants. And so most places like Cranbrook, for example, they would have 4 on shift, and so they would go. So it would also get you ready for when we grow and we can have 4 on shift. So there's that sort of possibility as well.
And sorry, Chief, as I understand, some of the rural fire departments have work experience placements as well, like I don't know if it's Elk Valley South Country, but I know that their fire chief was saying in recent wildfire response that they were invaluable because they were there and ready to go.
Exactly.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Audia Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. I think this question was partially answered, but our design will have like an asset management lens placed on it as well. Chief, maybe that's a question for CAO or Director Heisler. Just so that in light of some of the issues we've had, we want to make sure that we build a building that we can well maintain and take care of. So I was just wondering if the design takes into, maybe this material is better and it will last longer and it's less maintenance and this, that type of thing.
The full life cycle cost.
Yeah, the full life cycle cost.
Mayor and Council, not at this stage. This is a conceptual design based on the functional program, meaning the services we provide, the minimum standards, the code standards, and what that would cost as at a Class D or budgeting estimate level. And then from there, detailed design would be where you would select your materials, do refined design, and then have your maintenance program and life cycle maintenance planned out over the future. So we're not there as part of this scope of work yet.
Thank you. Councillor McIsaac.
Thank you, Worship. Mr. Boranowski touched on this already a bit, but I thought I would ask the question more explicitly. We're looking at significant population growth in Fernie, have for the last little while, and it seems very likely in the next 10 years we'll probably be at 10,000 people. I'm wondering, at that level of population, how does that actually affect the number of firefighters that we'll need, the number of vehicles that we'll need, the number of bays that we'll need? Like, what is there a direct impact on the design decisions for the fire hall, knowing that, well, presumably we don't want to build another fire hall in 10 years. Hopefully there'll be some period of time after that. And is that in the decision planning right now, and how much impact does that have?
Yeah, so I've looked at if we can have a complement with that has 4 per shift, and with the design that we're looking at, that would hold fast. Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Boranowski.
Many municipalities, as they start to reach that capacity tipping point, will do a fire services or emergency services master plan that then, but same as a recreation or parks rec and culture master plan would say, okay, at these population points and growth in these areas, you'll need these additional recreational facilities, and a fire master plan will generally provide that as well. It's not something Fernie has that's been updated or would be relevant in this case, but it's a separate, it is a valid and a real planning exercise that communities will go through when they start to reach the capacity of their fire service.
Yeah, I would think so. And it's a tricky one because you don't want to be too presumptive, because the growth of the community might be in an area where you're actually considering building a second fire hall versus adding to this fire hall. And that sort of the long range planning, it's difficult to predict, but it's a fire service.
That's where the fire master plan is wise at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. Other questions or comments from council? Councillor Nixon.
Thank you, Worship. So thanks for the report. It's really good. I'm looking forward to August 27th. It's a fine line we're walking here for I hope that we are looking at the generational thinking as well, and also the, the long-term, solar panels and all that kind of stuff like what they have in Vancouver, sort of thing, right? I know that might bust the budget, but I'm hoping that we can really lean on that green side as well. But it's a fine line you're walking, so thank you very much for
You're
doing it
welcome.
all.
Yeah. Yeah, there's things like, heated bays, floors, and heated aprons where, Public Works doesn't have to come do it first thing in the morning. They can get onto other streets and so on, but obviously there's cost involved in that. And will it, balance out by having that? So there's those kind of things we need to look at as well.
Thank you. Other comments, questions from council? I just want to say thank you again, Chief. And I don't want to ever lose sight of this fact that, your presentation went back to 2018, but this goes back to 1979 when we moved our fire department into a repurposed tire shop. And it is time to create a purpose-built building for these professionals. It's a required service for this community. We can't do it without it. Great illustration, live illustration today of how important it is. So yeah, it's time we do something different for sure. So thank you for this, and look forward to the future presentations.
Thank you.
With that, we'll move on to a report from our CAO. And I will have to ask one of our counselors, or he may declare. Thank you. Right? I've also got a conflict. Mr. Boranowski.
Thank you, Your Worship. I do have a brief presentation. We will see if I can get that going along. There we go. This presentation is regarding the report recommending the endorsement or execution of a memorandum of understanding with Shoesmith Enterprises Limited. I like to call it the SEL-COF MOU report. Essentially, staff are recommending that council endorse entering into a renewed memorandum of understanding with Shoesmith Enterprises as attached to this report. It's regarding the relocating of the CNL utility right-of-way and the contemplated further subdivision of their lands, and that committee directs staff to initiate a recosting of the proposed CNL realignment project. I'm going to touch a little bit on the background and current status before getting into some of the next steps that would come underway, provided you provide this direction. The CNL right-of-way is a right-of-way found on the lowermost slopes of the Mount Fernie, between Burma and the Elk River. It's a utility corridor. I do not know, nor have we been able to find why it's called the C&L right-of-way, but that is the working name for it. It includes water mains and sanitary mains constructed in 1981. It is the trunk that brings water down to the city from the Ferry Creek Reservoir, and it's also the line that reverses flow and supplies water up to that reservoir when we switch, as we have right now, to the James White Park wells, and they're in operation. Previous assessments have raised concerns due to leaks and slope stability, and we have noted that this is an important piece of infrastructure to relocate because of that instability. And I note that failure of the trunk line would result in the city of Fernie not being able to meet our demand for water. We would not be able to supply water sustainably to the city. So to address those known risks, council has directed staff on a number of occasions based on staff reports and assessments. We've completed a review of the James White wells pumping capacity and flow characteristics to confirm some upgrades to the water system. We are completing work on increased flow tests at the James White wells now, so their production is higher than it has traditionally been. Two, we had direction to secure right-of-way along a portion of the existing section of Burma Road, currently currently protected by legislation, but not by way of a right-of-way. We have completed preliminary and reasonably detailed designs of the proposed realignment, including Class B cost estimates to get us to probable construction costs, including stuff like a topograph survey, geotechnical investigation, and reporting to council on that proposed realignment and other potential methods for reconfiguring the CNL right-of-way or water and wastewater service. And we've investigated methods for funding the projects, including grant opportunities, borrowing, or looking at reserve funding. The right-of-way and the MOU are the reason we're here today. We did have a previous contemplated MOU that worked through and did not reach fruition. However, now we are bringing this forward and recommending that we advance it because that opens up a series of steps to reinitialize this project. And so the last action from council was to go ahead and apply for a grant opportunity that provided for 75% of the funding for this approximately $7.5 million project. We were unfortunately not successful in securing that grant. And now some significant time has elapsed, as well as some design refinements that have happened. Suggestion from staff is that we should recost the realignment project overall. Additionally, some general principles for a potential cost sharing agreement, essentially the apportionment of costs for the related servicing and then development utilities related to this initiative, have been developed with Shoesmith Enterprises and were previously endorsed by council. And so the MOU and the recommendations presented today open up a pathway to reinitiate efforts to secure the right-of-way, advance further subdivision, determine the funding required, and then pursue securing that funding, and then ultimately, ideally, relocate those utilities and better protect service to the community. The MOU is based on the understanding that the city will reinitiate this project, and it's a project staff believe is important for us to reinitialize. Upon learning that we did not secure the grant earlier this year, it's back on the work planning table for the Director of Engineering and Public Works and I, and it's something that we'd like to get moving again. Also, SEL is prepared to advance further subdivision of their lands based on the approval of the MOU and an allocation of budget or capacity to recost and go about seeking funding for this relocation. So it creates a further opportunity to secure that right-of-way where the utilities would go. And because of the significant negotiations and design review between SEL and the city of Fernie, there are some additional technical considerations that should be updated, and recosting the works should be brought back to council and to the city to reconsider the full scope of this project when we advance it. So staff are recommending the MOU. If approved, we'd bring forward further reports to council regarding a review and revisiting cost sharing apportionment principles, seeking funding from council to finalize the design and update cost estimates based on a review of what we've done together and identifying exactly what needs to happen there, and then seeking endorsement for funding applications or grant applications as they become available in the future. All told, our recommendation is the committee endorse entering into the renewed agreement and direct staff to reinitiate a recosting of the proposed CNL realignment project. The next step on that second recommendation would be for us to bring back a scope of work and a cost for that scope of work. So it's not committing to the budget today, but it's committing to move that forward and bring that back to council as a priority project for our engineering and public works departments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baranowski. Questions from council? Councilor Hamilton.
I just had one quick question, a bit more of a technical legalese type question. The agenda item says a renewed memorandum of agreement, but we're talking about a memorandum of understanding, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Councilor Nixon?
Thank you, Your Worship. So just in regards to the funding and the failed attempt, did we get any hints as to why we didn't get it?
Mr. Heisley may want to comment. I think he'd interviewed the granting body. Part of this grant was also around environmental protection and economic development, and sometimes you need to be so specifically keyed in. Also, I think there's just a phenomenal oversubscription for capital project grants.
Yeah.
Mr. Heisler?
Yeah, I can speak to that. Sorry to correct the CAO. I interviewed the granting authority for the SPF grant, which was the Main Town South grant. And we didn't get that one because of some missing pieces where they wanted ECDev specifically tied to that. This one, we don't have an answer why we didn't get this one, unfortunately.
Thank you, Mr. Eisner.
Apologies, I mixed up which granting authority he'd interviewed.
No, not at all. Well, it does strike me there's significant environmental liability should that bank fail, not least of all, given the recent sewage leak in the Nelson area into the lake. Councillor Amadas.
Thanks, Your Worship. It's just a lot of parallels with the community center also when I was reading through the file here. Again, not seeking a history lesson or anything, but how did we end up in this situation? Would be my first question. And the second question is, have we deteriorated in terms of increasing the risk since we haven't done anything since 2022?
I think Mr. Heisler's probably best on the second question. Without a history lesson, this is recently installed infrastructure, really unfortunately, and it was installed on a slope that then was found to be unstable after identifying leaks and identifying some sloping, and it's really unfortunate.
And sorry, Mr. Barnowski, can you remind us when it was installed?
In 1981.
Yeah,
it's nowhere near the end of its serviceable life. I would say that's significantly different than the community center, which in 2014 was at the end of its serviceable life. And so this isn't due to a lack of maintenance or investment over that serviceable life. It's due to the conditions of the land where those utilities were installed, I think, being inappropriate.
Thank you. Mr. Eisler?
Yeah, I can speak a bit to the history. There's quite a few leaks up there in the ballpark of 11 from, I would say, 2016 to 2019. There was a bit of a hot spot beneath the helipad, but generally they've been anywhere across the line, on the bottom of the line, the top of the line, coming out of the manholes for an air relief. We were just chasing leaks left and right. Then we kind of got things kind of under control in 2019, 2020, and we started having the geotechnical analysis because the manholes were tilting and all sorts of slope stability concerns that you could see from the surface. So that's where that all started. Went down the path of looking at relining it, but then you have to slope stabilize and reline and the cost of that. And as opposed to moving the line, and it just made more sense to move the line because it was pretty much the same cost. So that's a bit of the history lesson. Installed in 81. And then unfortunately, unfortunately, there was a lift station upgrade done on the Burma lift station. I'm going to say 2019, I'm within a year there, but there was also some upgrades done on that line at that point. But it's just been erosion of slope noticed going up there, see some pretty substantial leaks that are, 10 to 15 liters a second, and repairing them in a bit of a Looney Tune situation where you repair one and then the next day there's one over there. And eventually we kind of dug our way out of that in 2019, 2020, when we seemed to kind of get all the big leaks that we could observe from the surface and slope out of the way.
Further?
Second part of my question, Your Worship, have we increased the risk since 2022 to today?
Increased the risk? I think the biggest risk is not doing anything and maybe leaning a bit too much on a grant that we were hoping to get. We need to make a plan to resolve this. In the situation we don't get a grant, I think going forward would be the smart thing to do.
Agreed. Councillor Audrey Kelly?
Thanks, Your Worship. Do we have any idea of the timeline it will take to reinitialize and finalize the MOU? Because it has taken a considerable amount of time and it obviously has impacted SEL as well as the city.
Executing the MOU is very quick, instant, not a lot of work. But
based on our decision this evening.
Based on your decision this evening. Recosting should not take too long, but it's a matter of getting a quote, bringing that back to council, ensuring that we've got capacity or funding to do that. And then depending on if that's budgeted this year or next year, we can initiate those contracts quite quickly. I would imagine it would take a matter of months to complete refining the design and completing recosting, but then you'd have a funding ready project. Either you're dedicating reserve funds or borrowing or looking at grants or some other mix of strategies to get it completed.
Sorry, Mr. Heiser, did you have?
Not much to add to that, honestly.
Okay.
Just we can get a price for recosting quite quickly, and then
Okay.
depending on the availability of the consultant.
Further?
Thanks, Your Worship. Yes. And that work, the recosting, are we able to do that internally, or are we going to need external assistance?
We'll need external assistance on that.
Councilor Ramades?
Thanks, Your Worship. Could you remind us, Director, is this in IICP at all, like C&L?
Yeah, it's identified in there as a major risk. We had been onto this problem 2016, and we knew about the problem and the slopes, right? You could just look at the manholes and know that there's a slope stability problem going on. And when you had a leak on that steep of a pitch, a lot of earth started moving on you. So it's a pretty serious situation.
Yeah, and sorry, Mr. Heiser, you said we could start the recosting, given the availability of a consultant quite quickly.
Yeah, my only concern right now is as we're in a construction season
Yeah.
and holiday season, I don't know the availability of the consultants to pounce on this. You know, if we had a magic wand and council approved this budget, you know, in 2 weeks, I don't know what their availability would be.
Yeah, fair comment. The recosting part will be important to this because I was told yesterday that I know this isn't necessarily germane to this project, but structural steel went up 30% in 2023 alone. Like, things are off the charts. Other questions from council, comments? Seeing none, I will turn to our corporate officer and ask if you could read the recommendation, please.
That committee endorse entering into a renewed memorandum of understanding with Shoesmith Enterprise Limited as attached to this report regarding the relocation of the CNL utility right-of-way and contemplated subdivision of their lands.
Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Audie Kelly. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. Somebody could go and get our.
Oh, we just have one more resolution.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, see, it's on the following page.
The
To be
committee,
continued.
the committee directs staff to initiate a recosting of the proposed CNL realignment project.
Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Audie Kelly. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Rhodes. Well, we'll wait till our councillor and our communications manager come back. Just wait till I finish this chapter. Welcome back. With that, we will adjourn the committee of the whole to be followed immediately by our special meeting. Okay. Welcome once again to the special meeting of Fernie City Council convened at 7:40 p.m. on July 16th, 2024. Kisugukit, once again, we acknowledge that the city of Fernie is located with Kukinamakis, the unceded territory of Yakutat Nucleate, and we recognize that we live and work within their vast lands. The Kanahunik are from Yakutat Nucleate and are members of the Ktunaxa-speaking peoples of British Columbia, Idaho, and Montana. With that, I will call the meeting to order and ask for a mover and a seconder for the following staff recommendations: that the July 16th, 2024 special council meeting agenda be amended to include late item 4.1 public participation period and late item 6.1 resolution to close. Resolution to close, you'll be aware, was added during the week, but the public participation period had been left. We were using a template that was had yet to be updated. So with that, is there a mover? Councillor Audie Kelly, seconded by Councillor Hamilton. Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. With that, I will once again open the floor to public in attendance or participating electronically who wish to comment on items listed on the meeting agenda in accordance with section 3.7.3 of the procedure bylaw to address council, except speakers must not address council regarding a matter for which a public hearing must be held or has been held pursuant to the Local Government Act. Prior to council's consideration of the matter of adoption of the bylaw, speakers must not address council regarding a permit for which public notice must be given or has been given pursuant to the Local Government Act prior to council's consideration of issuance of the permit. And a speaker may only address council for a maximum of 3 minutes. So I'll look to the gallery. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to items on this agenda? Mr. Inglis, please approach the microphone and identify yourself.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and staff. Chris Inglis, resident of Fernie, 55 years. Over my time in Fernie, I've been involved very politically and also with different organizations within the city of Fernie, namely the Ghost Riders, with my family over 20 years of volunteering. And just one thing, it's changed in the last few years. If you notice participation from the citizens of Fernie, it's because of the procedure bylaw. I was encouraged by Councillor, sorry, I forgot his name. McIsaac. He brought forward, when I was watching one of the meetings, about allowing public participation on previous council meetings to talk about it, because it's hard now to sit and listen and watch, and then something comes up that you might want to comment on or have a different idea or public perspective. You can't do that the way that procedure is done now. So that's encouraging to know you can come back and talk about it after the fact. Also too, I would like you to know when the Fernie Hospital went into video check-in at the hospital, everybody's familiar with that. I was the community liaison that went there. They asked me to be on that as public participation because you see it from a different perspective when you're just part of the community. And my thing was when they're doing the check-in, they had the stall right there, but then they had the gallery of people waiting for emergency services sitting behind you. There was no privacy, and that violated the Privacy Act. So they agreed with me, and that's when they come up with a new room now. So it's very important that you allow public to participate. And right now with the structure you have, and you can only speak on the items of the agenda, it's, it very limits the public to come in and tell you about things, especially if it's things about safety and concerns. Somebody might have had something about the arena, somebody might have had something about the community center that maybe the workers didn't see, or maybe somebody overlooked, maybe they didn't have the time in their schedule. But the public and the users, to do that, you can't come in front of city council the way you have it structured right now and bring that to your attention. So I think I hope you can have a really long look at it and what it used to be like before, when people could come in and talk about what they see out in the public and maybe help people, citizens of Fernie, the staff, the city, and also, ultimately the safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Inglis. Just for clarity, public participation is on the agenda, so it's perfectly appropriate that Mr. English spoke to public participation in his 3 minutes. I will move on to item 5, if I've got this correct. Yes. A report from our CAO on the communications coordinator.
Thank you, Your Worship. One moment. There we go. Mayor and Council, this is a brief presentation related to the report on the special meeting agenda specific to a budget amendment seeking funding to allow us to increase communications capacity. A little background, the communication coordinator position was created in 2017. It was created as a part-time regular position to focus on external communications and engagement. In 2018, that was expanded to full-time, and it took on both internal and external communications and engagement. Since that time, it's generally expanded in scope a little bit in terms of the responsibilities and demands for external communications and engagement in particular. And in the fall of 2023, it was rescoped as a manager. That is because we made a deliberate decision trying to improve customer service to shift an existing municipal one clerk from our corporate administration department to report through the communications manager to give us an additional focus on front counter and customer service. And so that municipal clerk isn't a net new position, but its reporting relationship has moved over, and its primary function has just been solidified as providing front counter service. So that's a person that you see when you come into City Hall first, and to over time work on customer service standards, and as well provide some baseline communication support through production. And what I mean by production is gathering the material that would go into the city page, helping with advertising. And then this individual also has worked in a number of departments, and as a municipal one clerk, as part of their role, they provide backfill and coverage for leaves, vacations, and absences in other departments. As an example, they provided training and have provided backfill for, say, cemetery services when the engineering and public works clerk is not in, or shipping receiving. And then through tax time, a significant amount of work at the front counter when not deliberately backfilled to focus on communications, just handling payments. We've noted currently that additional resources are required to expand consultation, engagement, and communications. I'd like to recognize our communications manager. The volume and quality of our communications has increased significantly over the past year and a half. The expectations and the goals for communications and engagement, both from council and community expectations, and the desires of the department heads and managers and colleagues have also increased. The municipal one clerk reporting to that individual is at capacity, though. Supporting front counter means that they don't have significant time to dedicate that isn't interrupted semi-regularly by people coming in or calling in to the front desk. Their front counter support in the baseline outbound communications means that they don't have time and capacity for additional work. We have, as is noted in the report, looked at developing communication capacity in the few other municipal clerks who work across the organization. Some have excellent communication skills. Our clerks in parks, facilities, and recreation, planning, engineering and public works, and finance all have a good body of skills. However, these are additional duties beyond their baseline. And so as soon as the work pressures or volume of work increases, what we're finding is that their ability to support communications in a timely manner or deliver without being interrupted on commitments is inconsistent. And so we have inconsistent support trying to defray that demand throughout clerks across the organization. We've looked at a few alternatives, as noted in the report. Really, what we feel is that it comes down to looking at some considerations for council. And one thing that we have been doing this year is leveraging some casual coverage for when the communications manager is not available to try and maintain the current service level. That's acknowledging that our current communications and engagement abilities are constrained, and that some or the majority of the major communication projects are currently delayed. But that casual coverage has helped us maintain ongoing outbound communications. And you'll note that we've had really good, high quality communications for the past 2 weeks while our manager took a well-deserved vacation. We have looked at increasing the service level through consultants on major projects. We have a number of major projects, including organics and the fire hall, where we are leveraging external consulting resources. One thing we do find is that the manager spends a significant amount of time with those consultants on the capital or operational projects, providing local context, helping them understand the reality of working in a small remote municipality, where many of those high-powered consultants are from larger communities. And still, we wind up just by the reality of working in Fernie, being the individuals, the communications manager and their clerk who are booking the space, printing the materials, facilitating the discussion there in person. Those are just services where it doesn't make sense financially to pay a consultant to travel from another community with materials to be here for evening, weekend open houses, those types of engagements. And so they're very expensive to rely fully on
Mr.
consultants.
Borowski. Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. Do we have any idea or estimate of how much time is being spent just on providing the local flavor, the local perspective, as opposed to actually engaging with these consultants to get the work done?
I don't think that we've tracked it to that detail. I could ask Ms. Rode for comment on that breakdown. Not in detail, no. The day-to-day management and the local flavor, I don't think we've tracked separately. No. And so as a result, looking at council's strategic plan and the number of major projects that we've got coming up that are communications and engagement heavy, we are requesting a budget amendment for 2024 of up to $30,000, and then an ongoing financial commitment of between $92,000 and $117,000 to establish an ongoing communications coordinator position that would provide the day-to-day support and the backfill for the manager when they're away. We do note a portion of that would be capitalized with reduced consulting costs and communication costs on capital projects and major operating projects that are capitalized ongoing, but that is just a portion because there is general ongoing outbound communications work that is of an operational nature. And so that entire position is not able to be attributed to unique capital projects or utilities alone. Thank you, Council.
Councillor Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. You may not have this off the top of your head, CAO, but can you give us a ballpark idea of the annual salary of a municipal clerk one?
If you give me a moment or two, I can. Yep, certainly. Mayor and Council, I think it'll take me a little while to work that through because I have their hourly rates. And so I would need to translate that through the 30-hour or 35-hour work week and then look at our benefit loading on top of it. So I just need a little bit to confirm how many hours we use in a year to make that work.
Carry the one.
Approximately $80,000, Mayor and Council.
Okay, thank you.
That's for a municipal one clerk. Those would be considered our entry-level clerk positions currently.
Further?
Yes, please, just to clarify, the work to assist the communications department is currently attempting to be done by a municipal clerk one who's having conflict with their other base duties.
Mayor and Council, no, the very basic rudimentary efforts. So updating websites, collecting material to help produce, but not the editing, publishing, proofing, finalizing. Muni one clerks do not have in their job description or in their role capacity to perform that same value. And further, coverage for the manager when they are away and media relations requires, and facilitating communications and engagement externally will require a significantly flexible work schedule and a level of confidentiality that would typically position this as an exempt position rather than a municipal one or two clerk within the bargaining unit.
Councillor Hamilton?
I was just going to ask if this would be an exempt position or not, but that was just answered.
Okay. Other questions, comments from council? Councillor Ramirez.
Thank you, Worship. Just in terms of the quality of communication, CAO, it has improved a lot. I myself have told the staff many times, we see that. That's really, we're really grateful for the effort that that part of the organization is putting out. Yeah, but when it comes to, I know we haven't asked for a vote yet, but when it comes to actually endorsing it, I am struggling a little bit, Your Worship. So,
Can you provide your reasons?
it is a time of fiscal responsibility. Unfortunately, I know I'm sounding like a broken record on many of these files, but we just have to come up with some other means to either leverage on better technology or some kind of reallocating of resources. That would be my preference. Another option could be if the CAO can find some other cost-saving opportunity elsewhere and say, okay, we've saved here and we want to allocate the 30 grand here, I would be happy to endorse. But then again, this is not a vote against this initiative. I would fully support this at a different time, but not today. Maybe in a couple of years' time, when we have a better fiscal situation, bigger tax base, what have you, definitely would have endorsed this. And again, commendable work in the last couple of years. I know it's not easy to turn it around in terms of the often difficult situation we used to be in the previous past with the community when it came to communicating our values and all the improvements that happen in the city. So yeah, so I appreciate the sentiment behind it, but I will struggle to say yes to this particular ask.
Councillor Shoesmith.
Thank you, Mayor Milligan. Do we anticipate this, how to put it, the pressure that's on this department to continue? Is this going to be an ongoing thing, or is this something we can maybe ride out here?
Mayor and Council, if you look at your strategic plan, the pressure on this department is significant and expanding and will increase over time. The fact of the matter is, Council has made it clear through discussion at the Council table that they want additional, more comprehensive communications and engagement on capital projects, on plans, and without resources, that won't happen in a timely manner or in as comprehensive a manner. And so the fact of the matter is, as we look at an official community plan, as we look at potentially more streets projects, they're paying technical staff to do that consultation not as well as it should be done because of the skills mismatch, or we are delaying it or scoping it down, or we are paying external consultants, depending on the time sensitivity. But there, as is noted in the highlighted dashboard, that's a significant amount of work ahead, and we simply don't have the resources currently to do it in a timely manner. And so our options are to increase resources or to anticipate delays or reprioritize.
Councillor Hamlin.
Thank you, Your Worship. As someone who does communications day in, day out, I can certainly empathize with the challenges of running a communications department using external contractors. It's the bane of my existence. The amount of time that I personally spend adding the context, local context, takes me away from actually getting the work done that needs to get done. I too appreciate Councillor Ramirez's comments about the fiscal challenges that we face, but we've got a significant workload, a significant amount of communication, and as Mr. Bornowski pointed out, one of our council strategic objectives was increased engagement. So if we're not willing to actually put the money towards this or direct staff with where we think they should be deprioritizing, I don't know how we can't support this. If we're not going to support this, then we need to be giving staff explicit instructions on which of our priorities or which communications aspects, we don't want to prioritize as much.
Thank you. Councillor Nixon.
Thank you, Worship. This is a tough one. I know that we need it. A communication department of one is just not enough. However, I'm also aware of the 1%. I mean, that's what we're looking at. We're looking at a 1 to 1.2% tax increase. Director Burdett said that next year, 1% will be $90,000 in that last $94,000, somewhere in there. And then I had this written down. I was just like, I was, thinking about best practices from other communities. And just curious about the consultants and maybe a local consultant, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm listening to our fellow counselor across the table and hearing how hard that is. It's a bane of his existence. So, and I understand, I agree with all of Councillor Hamilton's points as well. So it's a tough one at this point. Looking forward to hearing other people's input.
Councillor Aria Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. I also am struggling with the additional cost. We've got so many really expensive challenges ahead of us, and a tax rate that I personally considered high. And we'd be starting right away at least the 1.2 increase to fund this on an ongoing basis. So, I mean, maybe there is opportunities to reprioritize that we're not aware of. Maybe we should be looking at those before we would go forward with approving this.
Thank you. Other comments? Councillor McIsaac?
I guess I'm the only one that hasn't weighed in. I'll try to be fairly brief. First of all, I'd like to say that the quality of the communications coming out of the city over the last few years has improved immensely. And that is thanks to the investment in that area and council last and current making that a priority. I think the proof of the pudding is in the eating. It is greatly improved. I think it's an important role. I think it's probably time based on the number of things that plates that are spinning on rods in the air to expand that. However, the cost is significant. I'm more worried about the timing of the cost. In the next little while, we're going to hear new costs, probably updated costs for the fire hall and for the CNL right away. I would like to know those numbers before I make a commitment to $90,000 to $100,000 for next year. I'd really like to have an image of what that looks like. So while I support this, I would like to suggest that this come back to us once we have an idea of what those particular costs look like, so we can judge that in the full light of the day.
Thank you. Councillor Shoesmith.
Thank you, Mayor Milligan. I think that with this issue, we're between a rock and a hard place here. We're staring down a 1% increase probably versus dropping the ball on communication, which, as we know, is very important. The public is here talking to us about that today. For my part, I think we should compare alternatives. This is a pretty serious thing. So what we should be doing is a fulsome discussion or analysis of, what's it really entail, either dropping something or using a consultant, and compare those three different options before us. I see the need. It makes sense to me, but I think that with nothing concrete to say or this or that, I don't think we're making a good decision with the taxpayers' money until we've looked at what that would be. Thank you.
Councillor Ramadas and then Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, Worship. I agree with what Councillor Shoesmith is saying, Your Worship, and I think he elaborated it a little better than what I said. And what I meant was not just strategic communication projects, but any project that is in the 90 to 120 range that we could perhaps deprioritize for this year. And then could we get this up on the list? I would be happy to entertain that option, if that makes sense.
It does.
Okay.
Councillor Hamilton?
Thank you. Do we have any idea of what we're currently actually spending on consultants to support us, and how much of that budget would actually be shifted towards funding this position? You know, if we're already spending $130,000 on consultants annually, this instantly becomes a no-brainer to support because it's saving us money.
Yeah. Great question. Mr.
Just
Baranowski?
one moment, Mayor and Council. Mayor and Council, you're bumping up at very quick napkin math without breaking it out, because we have some multi-year projects at $75,000 to $100,000 a year. That would be considering things like the fire hall project, organics, water conservation. Yeah, and then we have some specific consulting budgets that we've set aside for things like engagement framework, customer service standards, some tools and templates that we're developing. Only a portion of that would be able to be used as, be used as a tool for capitalizing part of this. So I wouldn't anticipate that whole amount of consulting would immediately go to a coordinator. And we have to look a little more detail in the specific budgeted capital and major projects coming up for the next year in terms of how much from each of those we could allocate, as we do with, say, our engineering project manager or our business analyst.
Yeah, it feels like that's a really key piece of this puzzle, is how much of that can be capitalized. You weren't able to give us a number, but I think that would be useful information, so we know where we could pull that money from. Councillor McIsaac and then Councillor Audie Kelly.
That's okay. Your worship, Mr. Baranowski answered my question.
Okay.
Thanks, Your Worship. I just wanted to say that I wanted to clarify, and thank you, Councillor Shoesmith, for being much more articulate than I was, as well as Councillor Ramadas. Is there something that we can reprioritize as a possibility? And I think we do need to do a more fulsome cost benefit analysis. And I think Councillor McIsaac made an excellent point. Timing is an issue.
Well, and equally, his point also suggests those projects will require significant capital investment and consequently could pay for a large portion of a communications position. And those are questions that we need to answer, I think.
Your Worship, if I may, ultimately coming up, you have a number of projects where there'll be significant public consultation.
Yeah.
The official community plan, parks and facilities master plans, wastewater system enhancements. If we're doing a waste water master plan or a waste management master plan. The CNL right-of-way is likely not one of those, but there are others, including water source and ongoing water security. So you're very right, but those are longer term, and we have acknowledged, and Mr. Burdett has acknowledged, that longer term capital planning is one of his priorities to start building out this year as we move forward. So developing that longer term clarity is something that would come hand in hand with that.
Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. Just as kind of, I guess, forecast, maybe that's not the right word, but if we were to delay this decision today and request more information to come back to a future meeting, i.e. capitalizing the cost, what risk or what, how might that impact some of our projects and some of our communications requirements over the next 3, 6, 12 months?
Mayor and Council, the main impact is that we're not able to advance the day-to-day communications and then respond to the emergent matters at the same time as advancing some of the priority projects that have been sitting there for quite a while. Those would be a more comprehensive engagement framework to support all staff, completing some website needs analysis, significant updating of website tools, some significant consultation around the redevelopment of our resort municipality initiative around the end of the year or start of the new year, unless we really leverage partners for that. And then we have some additional department-specific materials or projects noted as well that are simply like improving public education and engagement across all of our initiatives. Without additional resources, we're not going to be able to really move that dial on improving engagement or expanding consultation. So it's a holding the status quo and accepting that there just will be some delays. And then I think if I'm hearing council, it's coming back with a tool to support a dialogue on what those priorities may or may not be and what other options may exist in terms of adjusting priorities that might open this up as a possibility.
Yeah, I think if I may, I think what you hear from council is everybody is sympathetic to this, and we very much appreciate we have an overtaxed communications department, and the current state is not working optimally in terms of support. But even looking at the priority projects list, it's difficult for me to know, one, that, and I don't mean to denigrate anything, but that these are all necessarily even communications projects. Like I can see where there's potential communication support in one of them, but I'd prefer to see this fully prioritized. What are the projects that can wait? What are the projects that are absolutely key in the short term? Yeah, and to your point, Mr. Boronowski, what projects are immediately on the horizon we need to start planning for now? And I think, as I say, like it sounds to me like council is very sympathetic, but it's, I don't feel like we have enough information or clarity of information to make that decision this evening. Councillor Owenus?
Thanks, Your Worship. If I may provide a little bit of a suggestion there, I too had a little bit of a trouble reading through that all, and there were some excellent line items there, absolutely. One suggestion that I would provide CIO is, if you can somehow do like a 2x2 matrix of value versus ease, right? Which are the highest values, which are the ones that you can do it right away with no effort, which are the ones that takes a longer term effort, and maybe look at some of the ones that kind of bubble up in your top quadrant. And those are the ones that we can pursue, and the ones that are in the bottom quadrant, you can drop. Something of that sort will give us a better feel for, what's important and what is not.
Sorry, Councillor Hamilton, did you have an observation?
I did have an observation, but well, I guess the observation was, I think we've just kind of answered the initial question of what are we going to deprioritize, and it's essentially our communications. If we're going to delay this, we aren't going to be able to move forward as quickly as we might like on communicating out to the community on the value of these projects, the necessity of these projects, the intricacies of these projects. So that was my comment.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that's necessarily a fair observation. I think, we as a council prioritize communication and engagement. But to my comment to Mr. Boronowski now, like a bit more clarity around what the priorities really are. Like, again, I don't mean to sound critical, but highlighting this spreadsheet doesn't really help me understand where our priorities are. What are 1, 2, 3? What are must-dos? What are where we are struggling currently? Like if we don't have the resources, why, make it clear why things are being parked. I don't think we're necessarily deprioritizing communications at all. I think what we're trying to do is understand our need and resource it accordingly.
Perhaps clarify my language. Deprioritize isn't necessarily what I meant. Accelerating would maybe be. We're not putting the foot to the gas pedal on the communication. We're just maintaining the status quo.
Yeah, but putting the foot to the gas pedal requires we know exactly where we're going. So to that end, are you in a better position if we simply defeat this resolution, or would you prefer a deferment? Like what suits you, Mr. Bornowski?
Your worship, I think I just prefer a resolution directing staff to bring back additional information to support a more comprehensive consideration of the proposal for additional budget to support communications. And then we can make sure that there's a resolution guiding that.
Perfect.
I am making an assumption in saying that the council, as you have voiced, recognizes there's a need and a priority for communications, but wants additional detail and clarity on where we are, what our true priorities, what are true pinch points, and some additional rigor before making this kind of a decision.
Yeah, including, I think, has been raised. Are there other projects that we can defer that would make up the budget here? Councilor McIsaac.
Thank you, Worship. As part of that information that's coming back, Mr. Bornowski pointed out a lengthy list of projects that are going to be coming to our way in the next little while, all of which are going to require significant communication with the community and so on, especially things like the OCP and stuff. I would very much like to see, as part of the information coming back, what those projects would look like if we do not change, if we stay with the status quo in staffing, and what that would look like for external contracting going out. Because those are not going to be the only projects that are going to keep on coming.
Yeah.
So maybe a bit of a deeper dive on what the costing of those looks like if we choose not to do it in-house and to farm it out. I think that would help me from a perspective of looking at the ongoing cost versus, repeated one-time costs for contractors and so on.
Yeah, I think there's always value in, and as I say, that no lack of sympathy for the workload, but there's always value in understanding whether you want to add a resource permanently or there's an opportunity to use consultants for the heavy lift and then pull back in as a matter of fiscal responsibility when you don't need that support. Councillor Audie Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. I would just like to say our communications department does an excellent job with the resources that they do have. So this is in no way a reflection of, of not confidence or anything like that. It's more purely fiscal concern.
It really is. And I think it's just providing council with a level of clarity. This takes nothing away from our communications department at all. Councillor Hamilton, I apologize. Did you have another observation? Did I skip you there?
I think I did, but I think I've forgotten it all as well. So
strategic. Councillor Ravenous.
In fact, I had, Your Worship, I just wanted to comment on the communication portion to what Councillor Hamilton was saying. I think the communication is an enabler. Like, it's going to be there no matter what, like deprioritizing or accelerating or, being status quo is kind of meaningless in my thinking. Like, whatever project you're putting out there, communication becomes the bedrock of that. Like, you are going to engage with citizens, you're going to communicate with them. So I just don't know whether deprioritizing or accelerating means anything at all from a public-facing organization perspective.
Well, I'm not sure I agree with that either. I think ultimately, like all those projects that require communications require resources, and as we stack up project on project, then we will require more and more resources. Our analysis we need to understand is, do we need those resources permanently in-house? Do we need those resources to use consultants in support of that? For surge work, et cetera? Or do we need a hybrid? Do we need, I'm just literally just thinking aloud, do we need a part-time position that we can support or something of that nature? I just don't feel like we have enough information at this juncture to make that decision. Councillor Hamilton?
Thank you. Yeah, I agree exactly with what you said. And, the communications capacity is what we're really talking about.
Exactly,
And
yeah.
if we are not going to add additional resources to their capacity, we have to accept that the level of service that we're able to deliver is going to decrease.
Yeah.
One person working on one project can do a great job. One person working on 5 projects is going to deliver 20% on each one of those projects. So it's kind of tough to expect a department of one to meet or exceed any of our communications expectations without properly allocating resources to it.
Yeah, and as a council, we've made communication and engagement a priority, and we need to resource it accordingly. But let's understand what that looks like. I personally don't feel like we have a clear picture of that at this juncture.
Agreed.
So, Ms. Daniel, do you want a few minutes to create a resolution, or are you?
Council has had a lot of thoughts this evening to include in a resolution. I have one potential one, which may be easier to workshop aloud. I'll just read it first, and then I can send
Please,
it in the
thank you.
chat. That council directs staff to bring back a report, including a list of prioritized projects for both the short and long term, prioritized communications projects. Not how you spell that. Current capacity and resourcing issues faced by the communications department, impacts of staying at the status quo, costs of external communications consultants, and potential cost savings of reducing consultant use. I appreciate that's a mouthful, so I will send that out in the chat.
Thank you.
And we have not moved or seconded or
No.
really considered, so any amendments are completely fine.
Councillor Sue Smith?
Actually, never mind.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Ramirez?
I don't know if it's clear enough here, Your Worship. Like I said, it's not necessarily just communication projects, right? It can be anything. That wording needs to be in here. So we're not just confined to just communication heavy projects. It could be something else too, that we should be able to deprioritize and prioritize hiring of a coordinator.
In terms of shifting budget?
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
That doesn't come across here.
No, I think that's a fair comment.
Sorry, Councillor Ramadas, to clarify, short and long-term projects for the entire municipality or short and long-term projects with a communications requirement? I can
No,
amend it.
I think if I understand, forgive me, Councillor, if I understand it correctly, is identifying any existing, I don't know if they're operations, capital, or both projects that can be deferred or deprioritized such that that budget could be reallocated. Yeah.
That's what I was asking, Your Worship. That way you're actually, expanding the canvas here. Otherwise, we
Yeah.
are just confining ourselves to communication heavy projects and, juggling with them.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Councillor Kelly, and then Councillor McIsaac.
Just a suggestion, but would it help, Councillor Ramadas, if the list of prioritized projects, dropping the word communications between prioritized and projects?
I also have a possible additional end sentence I can send through, and identifying any existing operational or capital projects that could be deferred to make available budget for the position, or I'll switch the wording so it makes better sense.
Councillor McIsaac?
Yeah, I'm opposed to that. The discussion here is about a communications role. And I think that asking staff to come back with a full list of all the potential projects in the community, capital or otherwise, and prioritizing them and which ones can be dropped far exceeds the scope of what we're asking for here as far as a communications role. What we need to know is, what are the expected communication requirements from the department over the next 6 to 12 months with all the upcoming projects that are coming on, like OCP, CNL communications, et cetera, all those things, website development. Come back with that and say, this is what that role is going to do and cost. This is what it will cost if we don't hire a person and go out to external consultants. If we want to have, well, otherwise we're asking for all of staff to all get involved and all present a prioritized list of every project that they're working on. I don't believe that that is going to be particularly helpful to council in making a decision about the role for a level 1 communications person. So let's keep the focus on the communications part of this. That's not to say that there is no value in knowing what the projects are that are going on. I think we should all know that, and because we're going to have to make decisions about it budget-wise and so on. But that will be the appropriate time for that larger scale. This should be focused on the communications role and the costs and the time so that we can make a decision about that role.
Yeah, I'm not, I understand your perspective there, but I understand also Councillor Ramadas's thinking in that I hesitate though, how would I articulate this? I wouldn't want that to drive a low-hanging fruit conversation in terms of projects that can be dropped. So, you know, potentially you're right. The first part is what do we need communications wise, and what is the cost? And then, you know, can we capitalize that to a larger degree, or is this a greater priority than some other project that we have in the works? Because I think that is part of the question is, you know, can we stage things such that we can pay for this now and sort of maintain it into the future? Yeah, please go ahead.
Well, I would just say, Your Worship, that I think that's asking the question wrong, because now you're asking staff to do the prioritizing, and actually prioritizing is our responsibility. So let's find out what the projects are they're going to be working on. It's our job to say no, that particular thing is not a priority, take it off. Right? Like prioritization and policy and stuff is here. So we want staff to be able to come back and say, the reason we want this role is because we have these 10 projects coming up over the next 12 months. They're going to require this amount of communication. If we go to external contractors, it's going to cost $200,000. Alternatively, we can hire someone and spend $90,000 on it. That's the value right there. And this is going to be an ongoing thing. There are no years where there are no projects, right? So, but let's have a realistic look at what this person actually going to accomplish, supporting the priorities and strategic requirements that council has already put forward. And let's do a comparison and see, what does that look like if we don't do that? Does that mean that, because right now, I think we all agree, communications from the city is going well. You know, to speak to what Councillor Hamilton was saying, turning down this particular role means we're accepting the status quo for communication. That's not bad. The communication right now is currently good. Can it be better? Of course. Do we want it to be better? Of course we do. So, but what are the trade-offs in making that decision? And that's going to be, if we spend $90,000 on this, it's $90,000 we're not spending somewhere else. If we're not spending $90,000 in consultants to do this, then that's going to help pay for this role. We have some very big projects coming up. The fire hall, CNL, OCP, all these things are going to consume an inordinate amount of time. a bunch of those things are still going to require external contractors and consultants, no matter what, even if we do hire a person. I would like a clearer image of what the trade-off is. But I don't need staff to go through a full list of all the projects that we have in the community and make decisions about which ones are go and no go in order to fund this role. I think that's what we do.
Well, I would disagree with that. I don't think that's what we do.
Okay.
Because we don't go through staff's work plan and understand what their projects are every year, operation and cap. We have a sense of that.
We do that though.
Through the budget process, but we don't prioritize them.
Well, when they deliver the communication to us, they tell us what the priorities are. We get to decide whether or not we're going to fund that. That is the decision point. Yes, we're going to spend that money on that. That's the priority.
Yeah, but we don't set the priority in terms of time and spend, right?
Yeah, but we're doing it though in the same way. I apologize for the back and forth. Your worship.
No, I'm trying to understand your position because I think there is an opportunity for always, we've recently seen a draft dashboard to understand what projects are priority and where they will be delivered and when. But we don't have a fulsome view of the entire work plan through the year or through this entire financial plan.
I think that's fair. We are dependent upon staff communicating to us what the plan is and what they're going to do and what that's going to cost. Ultimately, though, we're deciding when we say, yes, we support that budget, we're supporting that plan. This is exactly the same. It's just a really small scale. It's one person. Do we support the project plan? Do we support spending the money to accomplish that? Except that, do we have a really good, clear idea of what that is? And what the trade-off is? Right? That's the question that I'm asking is, what is the trade-off between this role and not having the role? Status quo communication, I think we all understand. We know what it looks like right now.
Yeah.
So that's fine. If we do nothing, what we get is more of the same.
Yeah, but I guess ultimately I don't think it's an unfair question to ask for. I'm not asking all the staff to go through their project list, but to understand in terms of a broader picture of where in that financial plan, some of those things will potentially move, or do we have a sense where that will be delayed by X years? We could reallocate that budget now for this position. I don't think that's an unfair question to ask in terms of our spend through the financial plan. It doesn't, in my mind, it doesn't deprioritize communications. It adds communications into that mix of these are the things we need to deliver and this is when they will be delivered.
But if we're not limiting ourselves to communications, then we're really asking staff to say, which projects do you want to not do so that we can have a communications person?
No, I don't think that's true. I think we're asking,
I think that was exactly what Councillor Ramadas was asking.
No, I think
literally
he was asking, I think what he was asking is, do we have a sense of where these things will be delivered and can that budget be reallocated in the short term? Yeah.
Thanks, Your Worship. That's exactly what I was saying. Again, I don't think it'll be like boiling the ocean for the staff either. Like they are well versed with what went into the budget plan, and you're absolutely right. We didn't prioritize it during the budget discussion, so it would be. I don't think it'll be a big task for the staff to figure out which one they can sort of deprioritize would be a bad word, Your Worship. It's again the timing. Like if I can do something in August of 2024, could I do that in January of 2025? Those are the kind of questions that they would be answering. They're not necessarily going through 125 line items of which one to prioritize.
Councillor Shoesmith.
Thank you, Mayor Milligan. That's some really lively debate. I just point out that asking for the option is not removing this table's decision-making capacity. That responsibility still would rest with us, I would think.
I think that's true. Yeah. Councillor Nixon.
Thank you, Worship. Do we have an idea how long that could potentially take for finding this, doing this quest? And by the way, you can't boil the ocean.
The mayor and council, I don't think you're asking for, a thesis. You're asking for additional detail, prioritization, and for us as a leadership team to go back and say, okay, as a leadership team, we did all agree, looking at our different needs and priorities, that a communications resource was something we all supported, right? Regardless of which department members we're representing. Okay, then, what are some of the opportunity costs for doing that? And are any of those, are we willing to look at any other of those, delaying something to bring this to bear sooner? I don't think that's huge, but I don't think that's in the next 4 weeks kind of a report. Just given having to get the leadership team together and work through it and write it and review it, there's some work there. But yeah, that's not a satisfying answer. I probably
No,
appreciate
I think you've captured the spirit of what's being asked. Like it's not, to Councillor Ravenous' phrasing, it's not boiling the ocean. It is a quick scan of, are there any projects that we already know are likely not going to be delivered, or they will be delayed for X reason? Or Councillor Hamilton?
Thank you. I appreciate all the debate and the discussion here. The one thing that is just kind of stuck in the back of my mind, though, is we're still committing to this spending, whether we're taking the money from pot A or pot B and pushing it down the road. Ultimately, the projects that we're delaying, we're still anticipating spending the money on them. So what is the cost increase then on some of those projects? And what is, I've said it before, like what is the full life cycle implications of all of this, and when and where we spend our money? So I don't have an answer to it. I'm sure staff won't be able to put it together since they're not putting together a thesis for us. But I think we all just need to be cognizant of the fact that anything we delay, we're still spending the money on, and it's likely going to cost more next.
Always. Yeah, I would never suggest that we forget that notion, but also, if something is in I want to call it a natural state of delay for one reason or another, let's understand that. And if that represents an opportunity, great. If not, then we will revisit based on the information that's brought back. Councillor Ravenous.
Only suggestion I have for Councillor Hamilton, Your Worship, is if he's if he's a little afraid that we might I'm using the wrong words today. If there is a little bit of reluctance on Councillor Hamilton's point that whatever analysis we do will probably add up cost to certain projects, an option here could be to just put it for a vote and go up or down on this, rather than going for a full-time analysis on this.
Sorry, I'm not sure.
Like
understand.
just the initial motion that we had on the table, maybe we run that and put it for a vote. And that would probably allay some of Councillor Hamilton's fears here.
You mean the initial resolution?
Sorry, did I say motion? Initial resolution. Initial resolution which asked for whether we want to commit to a coordinator or not, put it for vote, and then we say yes or no, and then if it's a no, we are not going to have that person. If it's a yes, we just commit to extra tax increase.
Yeah, I'm actually more comfortable going with a modified resolution that, based on what I've heard around the table, there's some analysis I think that council would be happy to receive, and accordingly would allow us to keep this as a live issue. Councillor Audie Kelly and Councillor Shoesmith.
Thanks, Your Worship. I somewhat disagree with the we're going to spend the money regardless, because my understanding is we're being asked to add a permanent FTE, and that is an ongoing thing. So for me, I'm in agreement with you, Your Worship. I would like some more information before I want to make the decision to add a permanent FTE, because using consultants can be piecework, right? Adding a permanent FTE, we're committing to that for the long term. So I'd like to know that that is the best cost benefit decision that we can make.
Councillor Shoesmith.
Thank you, Mayor Milligan. For what it's worth, I think that staff has the gist of what we would want out of that potential motion that's written there. And I would be happy to move it as read, knowing that they understand what we're getting at. I'm not saying we should call the question immediately or anything.
No.
That's
Understood.
kind of where I stand.
Councillor Ramirez?
Just to be clear, I gave it as an option, your
No,
worship.
I
Yeah.
understand. Yeah, yeah. Ms. Daniel?
I have a potential new or amended, sorry, it's not amended because, well, are you officially moving,
No,
Counselor?
he said he would
Okay.
be happy. to
Would be
move it.
happy to. All right, we're on semantics. I can send this through. So it says that council directs staff to bring back a report, including a list of potential sources of funding for the proposed position within the existing budget, prioritize project for both the short and long term that have communications requirements, a list of prioritized short and long-term projects for the communications department, current capacity and resource issues faced by the communications department, impacts of staying at the status quo, costs of external communications consultants, and potential cost savings and reduced consultant use. I apologize. It becomes a bit of a laundry
No,
list, but if that is a potential that might fit council's needs.
Well, I would look to staff. I think it fits council's needs based on the discussion. I'd look to staff, and is that, I mean, that's very directive.
Our corporate officer has a preference for verbose and detail-oriented resolutions. And I have a preference for bring us back more information. Thank you.
Yeah.
But absolutely, this gives me the framework for what I need.
Okay.
If council prefers extremely detailed, my view is it's a bit operational, telling me the headings in my report that I'm going to bring back to you. But to be honest, it's better than me having to rewatch and re-listen to the meeting repeatedly to catch all the nuance. So there's been a lot of dialogue and I appreciate the detail.
Okay. Councillor Shoesmith?
I wouldn't want to rewatch this meeting a bunch of times either.
I thought he was then going to move it. Councillor Hamilton?
Well, if Councillor Shoesmith isn't going to move it, I will.
Seconder, Councillor Shoesmith. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Councillor McIsaac is opposed. A very thorough debate. Thank you. Does anyone else need a bio break? Can we take a 5-minute recess, Ms. Rhodes? I did want to say before you go to recess that I appreciate that conversation. I also appreciate the support we've received from our communications department since we prioritize communication and engagement. And I do not want for a moment anyone to think that that work is not excellent. So I just wanted to make that statement before we advance. Thank you. Okay, Ms. Rhodes, shall we reconvene? Are we back? I was waiting for it to tell me, so I apologize. Welcome back. We are on item 5.1. And I'll actually, these are the, I apologize, I'll get Ms. Daniels to read them. Thank you. It's been a long evening.
Yes, this is the recommendation for official community plan bylaw number 2231, amendment bylaw number 2521, 2024 that council provide official adoption. That was a terrible sentence. Sorry, that's the title and I was trying to make it suave, but I did not. So the staff recommendation is that council adopt official community plan number 2231, amendment bylaw number 2521, 2024.
Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Otter Kelly. Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you. And 5.2.
That council adopt zoning bylaw number 1750, amendment bylaw number 2522, 2024.
Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor McIsaac. Any discussion? All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Your worship, sorry, I believe I gave you a script that still has these listed as 5. They are 6. My apologies.
Okay. That's okay. Next.
That council adopt waterworks bylaw number 2485, 2023.
Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Shoesmith. Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you. That's unanimous. And the next one?
That council adopt water conservation and regulation bylaw number 2518, 2024.
Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Nixon. Any discussion? Councillor Shoesmith.
Thanks, Mayor Milligan. Just for the purpose of the listeners, the purpose of this bylaw is not to chase around kids playing with hoses or anything of that sort. And it's not driven by any insane plan. It's driven by the fact that our system is close to capacity. And it's not, there's no jackbooted army of bylaw out there. There's 2 people and they're gonna go after the egregious offenders with this. That's the plan here. I just wanted to make that statement so that anybody listening knows we're not just twirling our mustaches and stamping down on people with this.
Thank you for that, Councillor Shoesmith. Any further discussion? All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. And the next one is Daniel.
That council adopt municipal ticket information bylaw number 2041, amendment bylaw number 2519, 2024.
Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor McIsaac. Any discussion? All in favor? And I believe this is the last one.
That council adopt water connection and user charge bylaw number 1594, amendment bylaw number 2520, 2024.
Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Otter Kelly. Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you. That will bring us to what is presumably on your script, item number 7.
Yes.
If you could read that recommendation, please.
That the meeting be closed to the public pursuant to section 91C of the community charter as the subject matter being considered at this time relates to labor relations or other employee relations.
Mover, Councillor McIsaac, seconded by Councillor Hamilton. All those in favor? We are moving to close. So thank you everybody for joining us this evening, and we will now move into a closed session.